What's up, night owls? Ow. And happy Halloween to ya! Welcome back to the Nocturnal Mind YouTube channel. My name is Kaylee, and for more stories and storytelling shenanigans, boom, please feel free to check out our website. For most of us who celebrate this time of year, Halloween is all about embracing the spooky. And today I wanted to take a little time to talk about a few techniques in storytelling that, from my experience, provide your audience with the best scares. Now again, this is just my own personal list that I compiled from my own experiences with horror. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, first and foremost on this list for me is that you are always more scared of the monster you don't see. And basically, this comes from our overall fear of the unknown. Anything that we don't understand, anything that doesn't have a name attached to it, instills fear because we don't know what it might be capable of. And an issue I've noticed about horror, for me, is as soon as I find out what it is, my level of fear goes way down. In my opinion, Dean Koontz is a very good example of this. Not to say that his writing's bad. He's got a lot of interesting stories out there, several that I've read and enjoyed. But when it comes to horror, he always has this amazing build-up that really scares the pants off of me. But the payoff always falls short. So take the book Phantoms, for instance. I first actually started listening to the book on Audible, and it reached a point where I'd be lying wide-eyed in bed at night, terrified of where the story was gonna go. I mean, for starters, you've got a completely abandoned town. Entire population just disappears in the blink of an eye. And the survivors who have returned to it keep finding things like severed heads and severed hands holding the eyeliner that just left the message on the wall for them to see. And they also have this overwhelming sense that something's watching them when they're going through a dark corridor. It's freaky. He really builds up the tension. And then you finally find out what's going on, and it's all like, oh, it's a giant blob thing. Alright. And it's just like, eh? And I think that's his problem, actually. He's so good at building up that tension that nothing he does in the end is going to be good enough for our expectations. You're always more scared of the monster you don't see, because that sense of mystery incorporates your own fears and anxieties. You're scared of the monster you don't see because it is the scariest thing you can possibly imagine. And really, in the end, no author is going to capture that. But every creator is going to have to reveal their monster at some point. So my second piece of advice is, when you do reveal it, you really have to work hard to subvert expectations. And for me, that all comes down to twisting the familiar. Now, there's a concept called the Uncanny Valley, which refers to the levels of unease a person may reach depending on how humanoid a subject may be. Things that are pretty much human, but there's just something slightly off about them, make us unnerved. And there's a fine line in horror that's drawn between something being too human and something that's not human at all. You have to find that space where it's not human enough. But that doesn't strictly go for humanoid things. Again, you can stretch it to just the familiar in general. You can have something seem comfortable and welcoming, and still have this underlying sense of something not being right. A great example of this comes from my childhood, when we'd listen to old-time radio shows on long car rides. Because my parents are cool. And there was an X-1 dramatization based on Ray Bradbury's short story, Mars is Heaven. And in that story, a bunch of astronauts land on Mars to discover that all of their dead relatives have created a community that's based on the life each of them knew, and everything seems hunky-dory. The astronauts get to see their grandparents and other people that they have lost over the years, and everything seems just like home. But something is off, particularly for one of the astronauts who never knew his family growing up, and therefore is never able to find them on Mars. Eventually, the astronauts realize that the easiest way for an enemy to disarm you is to make you feel comfortable enough to put your weapon down. And as soon as this realization hits, all hell breaks loose. And to this day, I am a 27-year-old, 27? Yeah. I am a 27-year-old woman, and to this day, if I'm walking down a dark hallway in the middle of the night by myself, and I think of the words, "you don't need a drink," I go into full panic mode. I'm pretty sure my brother's been woken up a couple times by the sound of me scrambling up the stairs for dear life. So again, taking something familiar and making it uncomfortable somehow really helps add to the tension of your horror. Now, another way to take something normal and make it uncomfortable is to make it straight up unnatural. Now, this might not be a big deal to you, but me personally, I am already scared of sharks. And in his novel Jaws, author Peter Benchley was able to take just the very idea of a shark and make it even worse. And one of the most terrifying and memorable moments for me occurs very late in the book, when Brody, Quint, and Hooper are all on the boat. And I really just want to go ahead and just read the passage to you and let you experience it for yourself. No more than 10 feet off the stern, slightly to starboard, was the flat, conical snout of the fish. It stuck out of the water perhaps 2 feet. The top of the head was a sooty gray, pocked with 2 black eyes. At each side of the end of the snout, where the gray turned to cream white, were the nostrils, deep slashes in the armored hide. The mouth was open not quite halfway, a dim, dark cavern guarded by huge triangular teeth. Fish and men confronted each other for perhaps 10 seconds. Then Quint yelled, "Get an iron!" and, obeying himself, he dashed forward and began to fumble with a harpoon. Brody reached for the rifle. Just then the fish slid quietly backward into the water. The long side of the tail flicked once. Brody shot at it and missed, and the fish disappeared. Okay. Okay, so that might seem like nothing to you. Congratulations, you're not scared of sharks like I am. But what gets me the most about that scene is the visual of the giant head just sticking out of the water and staring at the crew. And why does that get me? Because it's completely unnatural for a shark. If there's one thing I know about sharks, it's that they have to be constantly moving in order to get water to flow over their gills. In other words, they have to be moving in order to breathe. So when you have a shark with its head just poking out of the water, staring silently at a boat for about 10 seconds, and then sliding backward, which is another thing, sharks can't go backward, as far as I know, into the water. Very unnatural and very creepy, especially for someone who's already scared of sharks. So again, if you have to reveal your monster, make it frightening in that it's able to do things that it shouldn't be able to do. And a final thought on twisting the familiar, twist the cliches. So a cliche is also something that's very familiar. In fact, a cliche is a concept that's been overused to the point that we all know exactly what's going on. For instance, the cliche of a group of teenagers stuck in a cabin overnight where an insane killer begins to pick them off one by one. Now, the game Until Dawn took this cliche and tricked us into thinking that that was all it was going to be. And then the Wendigos come in. And that's fun. So basically, the creators of Until Dawn went, "Oh, you're just a bunch of little teenagers stuck in a cabin. Oh, someone's gonna kill you. Oh, no. Bam! Your face gets eaten." Which, yeah, if you haven't played it or haven't at least seen gameplay of it, it's really good. Another thing you want to do when you're creating horror is you want to keep the situation out of your character's control for as long as you can. In other words, you want your characters to stay helpless. Because like the moment you finally see the monster, the moment your characters have a plan, then the scares get a little less. Because obviously the danger is still there, but now you know there's a chance they might get out of it alive. Which again, you always have to have that eventually, but as long as you're still trying to keep your audience scared, keep your characters helpless. This is probably the best demonstrated through works of Stephen King, particularly something like It, where all of the characters, at least for the first half of the story, are children. Because no offense to children, but by definition, they're kind of helpless. And especially when they're in a world where the adults won't help them, or are incapable of helping them. It makes the situation seem even more dire. But at the same time, it also makes us want to root for the kids. We tend to love the underdog because they have the most to gain. And because we're rooting for them, it makes us even more anxious when we feel that they might be in danger. So again, as long as you're keeping the situation out of your character's control, then you're maintaining that tension. And finally, concluding my own personal list of what to think about when you're creating horror, hide the why for as long as you can. Again, it's going to come up eventually, but just like the scary scariest monster is the one that you don't see. The scariest monster is also the one whose motivation is just completely unclear. This is probably part of the reason why I'm not really scared of vampires in general, because it's just like, oh yeah, you want blood, okay, whatever. Whereas something that's out there that just seems to be killing for fun, if anything, is really terrifying. Now I know this isn't exactly a horror example, but it still deals with the concept of a fear of the unpredictable. So a long time ago, I saw this movie called The Dark Knight, and it immediately began my fascination with the Joker. And at one point, a short time afterward, I saw some commenter online being all like, the Joker's not scary. He doesn't have a plan. He's just randomly spreading chaos. And that doesn't scare you? I'm sorry, but a guy who randomly goes around blowing up buildings is much scarier to me than someone who has an agenda. Because even if some crazy psychopath has an agenda, then you know it's going to be calculated. It's going to be thought out. And if something is calculated and thought out, it also has some level of predictability to it. And from that, we can at least venture a guess at which building is going to be blown up, and maybe even when. So therefore, once a monster's motivation is established, the threat becomes lesser, because suddenly there's a little bit of a level of predictability to it. Yeah, I'm not scared of Dracula, because I know he's just out for blood. And while that's freaky, I'll admit, knowing what he's after also allows me to take the necessary steps to prevent him getting what he's after. So again, keep the reasons behind your monster's actions a mystery for as long as you can. It'll have to come out eventually, but the longer you hold it out for, the longer you hold out that tension for your audience. Alright, so those are just a few of my own personal observations when it comes to the subject of horror. Night owls. Are there any other techniques you would recommend for our horror hopefuls out there? Just drop them in the comments below. And feel free to request any commentaries you would like to see done in the future. Be sure to check us out at nocturnalmind.net for more shenanigans. And please have a happy and safe Halloween. And we'll see you next time.